as a democratic republic in the United States, at least ideally, the voters choose the leaders, but a republic is representatives. I'm trying to click buttons as I talk. Representatives of the people, and we first talked about republics. This goes back to Greece and Rome, especially Rome, and the Roman Republic was probably the most famous one. And a couple of things about that. So you see, he would have great influence on philosophers down the road, and one we have to mention is Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine is an Englishman. He basically came to the United States in 1775, seeing the rebellion there, and he would write, Okay, I missed the, I gotta change this. That one kind of annoys me, because that doesn't make me laugh. In Common Sense in 1776, he justified the revolution. Dude, I capitalized it so y'all got it. He justified it by saying, kings have power by luck of birth. What gives them the power? So very much like John Locke. The funny thing about was John Locke is justifying having a king and queen, William and Mary. Paine is saying there shouldn't be divine right at all. And he'd also be known for writing The Rights of Man during the French Revolution. And he would barely escape with his head, literally. When the assumption was he had gone too far and maybe be counter-revolutionary during what's called the Terror. Oh, we'll get to the Terror. So, almost immediately from Locke, and you'll see it from Voltaire, and you'll see it from Rousseau, the French Revolution, all the way to, let's say, the Civil Rights Movement in the United States and Women's Rights Movement. There'll be a conservative backlash. And this backlash against those who wanted to conserve or keep the old hierarchies. And that's where conservative comes from. This idea that certain people are supposed to be on top, an aristocracy. Kings, noblemen, priests, it's supposed to be that way. Some people are supposed to be on the bottom, some people are supposed to be on top. And so this is James Burke, in writing about his criticizing the French Revolution, but I just thought conservative backlash. And so you're going to have this constant fight from Locke all the way on. You see with Locke about those who are demanding more rights for regular people, more voice in government, more responsibility to decide their own fate. On one side, more liberty, and that's where the term liberal comes from, against those who want to keep the old hierarchy, conserve the hierarchy, conservative. And it goes on to this day. Now, I should add, those terms I just gave you, conservative and liberal, are so misused all the time, almost like weird teams, that it's hard to really know what people mean when they say it. Be very wary of people who do. You have to look into yourself and be skeptical, but that's where the terms come from. And so the philosophe would be that enlightened individual. The enlightened individual. Okay, only reason I chose this painting is because we have book, pen, writing. He's looking at a top. So I got the top. It's not a top. See? That's enlightenment. And these are almost always relatively upper class people. So let's get to a few of the philosophes. Where's my mouse? So they believe in this concept that there can be change. We can progress. We can be different. Now, of course, they're going to bitterly disagree with what that means. And a lot of these people who are philosophes are relatively wealthy. So they have the time to look at these things and don't have to worry about the day-to-day process and trials of survival. Also, they're committed to some kind of reforms. Now, we might disagree what a reform is. It isn't really reform. An example in the 19th century, an enlightened reform, were poorhouses, where they would take impoverished people and basically make them slave laborers in these open fire trap warehouses, where they would basically imprison them until they could find a job and go on their own. Of course, how do you find a job and be independent if you're a slave laborer within these poorhouses? And that was seen as a great reform. And so always be wary if someone's reform might not be reformed to somebody else. And you'll see in these 18th century, they're very optimistic. This idea that we've all seen the light. Speaking of light, We've all seen the light. Notice I did that? Almost like I planned it. We're moving forward. I turned the light on. Very clever. So at that, do you trust that kid?
No.
Who trusts him? Does anyone trust him? You trust him?
No.
You're with him, not us?
No.
So don't write this down. The centers of enlightenment are going to be the major metropolitan areas, but you'll see it Amsterdam, of course, but London and Paris. Not as much in Italy, even though there's going to be universities here. And you'll see it start to spread in Munich, Leipzig, and this brand new place called Berlin. Berlin is going to be such a dynamic place. My sister-in-law lives in Berlin, her and her husband and son. You know, Berlin, very expensive place to live, as you can imagine. They have a little apartment, but only reason I'm telling you this is because I just thought of it. But they help their friends because they have a couple friends with houses. And they went to the train station 2 days ago, and they had a sign, we can take three, one was three and one was two refugees. So a train from Ukraine came in, they just held a sign. So my sister-in-law is doing, helping them, one family, a mother and their two daughters from Ukraine. So that's happening. My wife talked to her on Sunday, and then they texted a few times just about how they're doing. They speak English quite well, and almost everyone in Germany speaks English. At least they all the young people. So that's how. But that's happening right now. Not men. We're not letting men 18 to 60 stay. Not necessarily to fight, but the implication is they got to contribute to the war effort. So back to this, back to the Enlightenment. By the way, there's going to be a lot of enlightened wars. Salons would be these places where the philosophes would meet. And basically, for very wealthy elite, a lot of nobility. And you might think, wait a minute, these kind of go against the nobility. Well, that's a way for the nobility to say, look how educated I am. That's a spot where the elite to meet. That's why I rhyme there. Elite to meet. Pretty cool. Well, these are salons, and they would be like tea houses. And a lot of times they'd be run by women. For example, they call them the salonières. And Jefferson is one of the most famous. We'll show her house in just a second. Julia D. Okay, I'll mispronounce it because I don't speak French very well. My wife did. Anybody can do it in French? The correct pronunciation? I just throw the E silence. Silent. Les pians. Okay. No, I do it in Italian there. But Necker is going to be one of the most important ones. She is going to be virtually everywhere in the events leading up to the French Revolution and the French Revolution. So Necker would be all over, and we will come back to Necker. Yeah. Necker.
Are you sure that's how you pronounce Geo?
No.
No. What's her name again?
I thought it was Joffrin, but I don't know. Don't quote me. Here's her salon, and you'll notice women and men would be there. Don't think in terms quite of equality. Women were still considered second class, but women, this was a place where they could talk. Men would listen. They had influence, but it always was behind the scenes. And she's here. But you notice it's all men, all in wigs. Wigs were the style, and men would wear lead makeup too. There's just a new study out that anybody born before 1996 has significantly lower IQs and more violent.
I doubt that.
Oh, it's very true. Why? Lead. You know why? A couple might know. What's that?
Poisoning.
But it's what did lead come from?
Lead paint, lead pipes.
Yeah, I talked about that. It's pipe paint a little bit, but it's leadic acid. Lead gasoline had what lead in it. So all the exhaust had lead. So anybody born for 1996 was sucking in probably about 20 times more lead than you are.
That was healthy.
Which makes people born for 1996 significantly more violent and uncontrollable. I'm just reminding you of that because this might shock you. I was born significantly before 1996. Yeah, 1995 I was born.
No, I think you were born
1895.
No, I
So
think
that.
you were born in like 2001 BC.
So you didn't write these down, but these are the American philosophies. If you have for American history, you will get these. So these are the ones who you're going to write. Thomas Jefferson is probably the most famous, the author of the Declaration of Independence. So let's get a few more of those philosophers and let's get to, reading levels. And one thing I would say, the literacy rate from Germany through here by 1800 was about 80%. Was about 80% literacy rate. 60% in women. Now, when I mean literacy, enough to read a little bit, but it's much more literate than people think. And books were incredibly expensive. So, 20, I'm supposed to say readers, not reads, 20 readers per one book. There'd be 20 readers per one book. The idea is when you get a book, pass it around. This is where you start getting, libraries before this were areas where you would store books, just basically lock them away. More and more here, it's going to be places for people to go and borrow books. A big change, a big adaptation. I love libraries. So, one other thing too. We're going to skip about that. Let's go to the next. So, let's get to Voltaire. Voltaire is going to be the next of the famous philosophers we have to get to. There are a few we must do. Voltaire, Locke, Montesquieu, Rousseau. Oh, and Diderot. So, his name is Francis Marie Arouet, but we just call him Voltaire. So, as long as you know Voltaire, you're okay. And a number of the books that he is best known for, the Philosophical Dictionary, that's okay. Candide is a good read. I know there's some classes we have to read Candide here. I don't know if has anyone read Candide. Last year, a few did. It's a satirical novel about a king and leadership and this kind of crazy state that without reason. It's a good story. And in Spirit of Nations, he really gets an idea of the ideal enlightened ruler. So Candide is probably the most famous of these books. The other two, you're probably, I'm not going to make you know as much as Candide. Candide being a good like multiple choice question. But there's lots of statues of Voltaire. And Voltaire has many different looks. Voltaire is going to be very famous. He's an interesting guy. Some parts I like about Voltaire, some I don't. But one person we have to get to. Châtelet, a French noblewoman, was this kind of a mistress. She was, obviously have to be behind the scenes. Partially about being a noblewoman, she could at least have a little bit of time to do this. But she learned mathematics and physics from Newton, and Leibniz was the other person who potentially might have done calculus before Newton. But she was very well learned, and she taught Voltaire science. And yes, she was married, but this, marriages were arranged. These were political marriages and that kind of thing. And so she had great influence, and that's why I want to mention her, is because there were women who were very much involved with the Enlightenment, but they're always kind of behind the scenes. It just, men are going to be on top. You're going to see this a lot where when Europeans go to the New World, women had great power in the American Indian tribes, but Europeans only wanted to deal with men. So, Voltaire's philosophy is really a series of criticisms of his vision of the state, what he observed. And so, he was a deist. He challenged the organized religion. Deist means?
I believe in the creation of, I guess not really. Yeah, it's like a flip the switch or whatever.
And then what does the creator do after the switch is flipped?
Nothing. It's just
Sits back and watches the creation. And so that's another one. Voltaire looks different. So many different pictures of Voltaire. It's kind of funny. And as he saw, he thought organized religion bred intolerance and bigotry, hatred of others for being different, whatever that might be. Now, if you look at his view towards religion, whether you agree or disagree, don't forget, his view is very much tainted by all those religious wars, the wars of the Three Henrys, the horrific 30 Years' War, the constant religious battles, and also the English Civil War. So he looks at it as, look what these religions have done. So that's what he's coming from, his historical background. And as he said, religion must be destroyed. He literally called it crush the information. It's not that he didn't believe in spirituality. He just didn't trust the organized religion. By the way, you want to find some fake quotes, look at Voltaire. I'll show you a couple. He believed the best system of government, even though he believed in equality, he believed in rights. He believed in what Locke said. He thought most people are incapable of doing it. What we need is enlightened despotism. Some of you might remember the Greek philosopher Plato, who said an enlightened king, a philosopher king, an enlightened despot. Now, I think despot, I think like an autocratic dictator who, like Putin. That's what I think a despot. But this goes back to the Greek definition of basically just someone with a dictator in charge. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're evil. So he doesn't want like what we might consider a despot. Just thinking about somebody with ultimate control, but they'll be enlightened. So he had a Hobbesian idea. Remember Hobbes and the Leviathan, where people are just out of control monsters, we must need a strong man, and that was going to be Cromwell, until Hobbes got there and Cromwell almost had him killed. So he had a Hobbesian idea that we need a despot to control the population, but he didn't want a Leviathan. He didn't want this brutal leader. He wanted a despot, a monarch, who would be looking out for the best of the country. And so you're going to get a whole series of enlightened despots. Were they really enlightened? Well, you know. But like Frederick the Great of Prussia, or Catherine the Great, or Maria Theresa of Austria, things like that. Oh, I put them up there. I forgot I did that. So he believed in equality under the law. Everybody should be equal and the law should apply, but not by class. He did not believe the classes should be equal. There is a hierarchy. Certain people should be on top and eventually the. So yeah, there is an upper class. There's an aristocracy. There shouldn't be no upper, lower class, or there should still be division. So he had that view. And he had this weird kind of view towards property, that only certain people should have it. He hung out with relatively wealthy people. And he told them what they wanted to hear. That's why you got to sometimes take what people say with a grain of salt. People say what their audience wants to hear. The people reading him are not the poor. The people reading him are people who want to believe that they could be enlightened monarchs too. And so here, if you go online and look up Voltaire, and I love when people must spend a lot of time making these little pictures with the quotes. And I just saw, somebody sent me this. And then God is a comedian playing to an audience afraid to laugh. I disapprove what you say, but defend your right to say it. You know, those kind of things. No, Voltaire never said any of those things. So be wary when people send you quotes, or you look on the internet or something. And what internet thing are you into? The cup and string thing? Is that what we're into now? Cup.
Is
that what?
Yeah, it's modern technology.
If you're an old person, this is the kind of stuff you would see on Facebook all the time. I'm one of the few old people you know who's not on Facebook. My guess is you know old people on Facebook. Old people are people older than you. Actually, Facebook's like for 8 people older than me, and I'm old. So with that, now these are just quotes. So let's look at some of the quotes from Voltaire. These are actually really quotes. So here's one. Every man is guilty of all the good that he didn't do. That's a pretty good quote, but what does it mean? I don't know.
People who could have done good didn't.
Yeah. He was really talking about the people who didn't do something and they had a chance. Had a chance. And so that kind of fits in the ideas we're all in this together. And if you let something bad happen, we all suffer. Now, he was a deist, so he did believe in the creator. When he meets God here, what he's talking about, when he wrote this, he was talking about organized religion. But if it didn't exist, somebody created it. Why? Because that controls people. We get another one. Do you like that one? That's a pretty good one. It should scare you. Because if you're right, what might the established authorities do to you? Potentially punish you, humiliate you. It's amazing how many people are going to be right about things. And this might happen to you. And those in power will be resentful of the fact that you were right. I'm in kind of awe. And just in 2003, the United States invaded Iraq for all kinds of reasons. They're trying to be pretty much lies. And almost all the people who promoted that are still either in government, they still have power, they're still on the news, they write articles. It's kind of amazing. One of the people who voted for that war and said it was a good thing is our current president. The previous president, too, was for the war. He didn't vote for it, but he was for it. Then would later on say he wasn't because that's kind of what he does. But I kind of like that one. Because people do make mistakes. But truth is truth. Want a few more? Now, he's not saying that you shouldn't know stuff. But people who always have answers are usually people who what?
Probably not.
What's that?
Probably not.
Potentially. Or,
Why?
maybe. I'll tell you one thing they're certainly not doing. What?
Power.
Say it again.
They're in power.
Yeah, they're in power, and are they listening to other people around them
No.
about the actual problems they're going through? No, they just have answers for everybody. So you're kind of right. All that kind of fits in there. By the way, another Voltaire. Doesn't look different every one. I'm trying to
It
get.
looks like do we know which one is actually did he just look different all the time, or like why are there so many different images?
Because no one knows what they actually.
Yeah, they're all. A lot of them are painting sculptures of paintings. So you get my image of it, an image of someone else's image, and someone else's image. Let's do a couple more. And so what he believed at birth, we're all a clean slate. We're all a clean slate. All are equal, a clean slate. But it's after birth. It's what we learn and what we do with it. That's what makes the difference. Now, did he really believe that? Not necessarily, because he also believed in kind of an aristocracy. What's an aristocracy? It's usually by birth. I thought that was a good one. That means basically, okay, judgment could be that, but not thinking about it. And then, of course, now what's so funny about that? He was accused of being a bore and telling everybody everything all the time, too. That's a little bit of the pot calling the kettle black. All right, so let's get to a couple more people then. After Voltaire, let's get to Diderot very quickly. Diderot was just this amazing person in so many ways. An intellectual, by the way, looks about 12 here. Younger men or women, they try to make like Junior high age girl.
He looks more like he's 17.
Okay, I'll give him 17. But he wanted to come up with this complete way of thinking. Change all thinking, the cycle of learning and thinking. Come up with a new way, a method to change the way people thought. And he really did bring this about. So he's a contemporary of Voltaire. He's going to spend time in the court of Catherine the Great. And let me give you two of his quotes. If you're looking at history, science, or society, the cold light of reason to look at it. Don't worry about other people's feelings. Now, did he do that? You're in the court of Catherine the Great, you're worried about other people's feelings. But this is the idea about it. Truth does not care about feelings. Now, of course, what is truth? That's another story we'll get to. And then, so what's he applying there? Census laws are census laws that should be violated. What should we do? What should we do until they're changed? Meaning know what? What is the word that would be used by the end of the century? No revolution. No revolution. So he is relatively moderate. Accept what we have and then change it. So what he would come up with is the encyclopedia. Now, for good or bad, you guys miss the encyclopedia. I know we have one. I have a set of encyclopedias. They were amazing when I was your age because you can go look everything up. Now we have like a big encyclopedia called the Internet, where half of it's not true. But the encyclopedia, and 28 volumes, alphabetical. This new thing of cross-reference. We saw that in the video. Data Universe Change 5. Data Universe Change 4. It's indexed in the back so you can find things. It's indexed and then references. You have a fact here. Like I might say grain, and then might list out all the different types of grain, barley, rye, etc. And have what pages are so you can look that up and look that up and look that up. That's how I learned to research. The Internet does this automatically. It's just the same deal that you don't know what's true or not. Yes, there'd be mistakes in encyclopedias, just not the volume of mistakes. And it was, you don't have to write down the number. I'm just trying to give you one. It was really expensive. That was well over a year's wage for a middle-class person. So this was a big deal. But now, when I was a kid, there were door-to-door encyclopedia salesmen. They'd come to your door and sell encyclopedias. To get encyclopedias for your kids. And it was a big deal. I know in my parents' house, there are still 2 sets of encyclopedias. But this tried to set up all the knowledge in the world, way to think about it, organize it, connect one thing to another. And so here's some of the illustrations from here where you could look up how to garden, how to do everything in the encyclopedia. It was absolutely remarkable. Here in his encyclopedia, you have anatomy. Here you have the process to make a sleeve. Those are the, you put the sleeve over that, and then you sew it together. All of it in the encyclopedia. Everything you need. And so in Data Universe Change 4, the one they talked about books, and Burke was talking about how before you had to know everything, now you just look it up. And it's the same kind of thing now we look up, we can do this online and do things like that. But it was all in the encyclopedia, a new way of thinking about things. So this is actually kind of amazing. How to make a canal and how to make locks. Which, yes, that's what we're going to do for a spring project. We're going to make a canal from here to Missoula. So we got to go over some mountains.
We would do the
You
mountains.
could go through.
No, we're going to cut a tunnel. We're going to cut a trench. So bring a good shovel. Here is making the puddling of steel. Yes, we'll have to make our own steel for the canal. And of course, Oh, how to make a chair. So that's the point. It has everything in it. And anatomy. It's remarkable how he put everything in there. And so, people who subscribe to it, Catherine the Great was a subscriber to his encyclopedia. She would wait for every single copy. But subscriptions all over France. It was a big deal to have them. That was something you could show up to people. Look at this. Now, I've seen these in a museum, and they really are remarkable. The drawing is really cool. Oh, there's still a lot. He made so many of them. Because in the new modern printing press, so many of those. I don't know the exact number, but I've seen 2 in museums. My assumption is there's probably many more. I knew I was in a house, when I was in Blenheim, there was an encyclopedia there. Just, it was in their massive library, and there was Diderot's encyclopedia. No, they don't let you look at those books.
That sucks.
So let's get to the last one, Montesquieu. Because we got to get to Rousseau, one more thing tomorrow. Montesquieu, and he was born during the time of Louis XIV and died Louis XV. And he would write on the spirit of the laws. That would be published after he was gone. Montesquieu, there's nobody who had greater influence on the U.S. Constitution, anybody outside the U.S., any philosopher, than Montesquieu. Locke, the Declaration of Independence is just dripping with Locke. The Constitution, Montesquieu. And Montesquieu would write there are 3 types. Did I say types? I meant to put branches. Well, he wrote down types. But we would say branches in the United States. Yes, he did write down types. Sorry, I jumped the gun here. There's monarchy, republic, and despotism. Despotism is not necessarily good or bad. It's a dictatorship. Monarchy and a republic. Are there more types of government? Kind of. But democracies, a true democracy by definition, can't be very big because it requires people to vote on every single law. Yeah.
North Korea and despotism?
What's that?
North Korea and despotism?
Yes, by definition. But they're kind of almost a monarchy too, because his father was king, was the premier, father from premier, you know. So it's like a hereditary despot. And he believed that a government to have true freedom and liberty, so very Lockean here, there must be a separation of powers within the government. A separation of powers. And this is the essence of the U.S. Constitution, aka Madison's Constitution. And what are the 3 groups or branches in government? The judicial, the legislative, and the executive. And they must be separate. Now, Montesquieu was writing this with Louis XV. And Louis XV was all 3. So after Louis XIV died, his grandson, he was beside the judge. Louis XV made the laws and carried them out. And what he says is that there must be some kind of separation between them or a despot will form. And so you're going to get an element of the French Revolution, well, they'll go there, but the U.S. Constitution, that's why you have separate these branches. That's part of the reason why they have separate terms and they're not connected. Nobody else would follow this like the United States did. So that's where we quit. Let me give you the maps, and we got a couple more people to go, and then we'll be done with the Enlightenment. One more little bit of war. Do you want the maps?
It depends.
Put the maps over here. There are world maps, because the 7-Year War was a world war. So you need lights.
Did you change the ink?
Hmm?
Did you change the ink?
What's that?
The ink is hard to write on.
Oh, no. I try to make it less. I try to make it a little bit less dark, and it just won't work. When I try to make it less dark, so it didn't work. But I did use a different copy machine, so maybe it is a little better. So, see what you know before you start looking into a map. The first few are like battles, of just a few of the battles or forts of the 7 Years' War. Then we get to some cities, and then we get to countries, and then waterways. So the cities and battles, those are on the top, and then we have Austria, which starts with countries. Countries are islands or colonies. Down to Sweden, and then once you get past Sweden, you get to water. Oh, and then the last ones, you have to designate the I think I have the Ottoman Empire twice. I'm sorry about that. I blame Grace here. But my mistake. I don't make the rules. See what you know before you look at the map. There's a couple very good maps online. In fact, Wikipedia has a very good one in the 1700s. So see what you know. Especially once you get to Austria and go from there. Oh, Cape Colony. You even know where Cape Colony is? Would you like a hint? It's on the map. Very good. It's around a town called Cape Town. South Africa. Yeah, the tip of South Africa, the kind of slightly dark area. And that was a Dutch colony. There'd be a little group of those Dutch immigrants. This group of Dutch who immigrated there, colonized it. They'd be called the Boers. I'll be right back. Then as soon as you get that, work on the other ones. Wikipedia has a very good one. It's very good. I stretched it out, so it's a little bit even weirder looking. Is it better to write than the other one?
Yeah, a little.
Yeah. I'll try. Any questions? I'll be glad to point. I just pointed. Which one?
This one right here?
Yep.
Or is it this?
They've written the item. I know it's kind of hard to see as an item. Yeah.
The one I put in there, just use an arrow. Okay, like an arrow. Right? Okay.
I know it's going to be kind of tight. I blame science.
I just put GBs.
GB's good. Bulgaria. I just want to say. Yes.
This one is equality or this
I don't know why I put Peru there. Peru? Yeah, that's probably New Spain, and then Brazil's Portuguese. Empire. So it's Angola and Mozambique. There's also an island in one of the spots in India, it's Portuguese too. So this will be due on Thursday. I'll give you a little bit of time tomorrow to finish it up. Guyana. And there's Guinea there too, right? I have Guinea there, don't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wednesday. Today Tuesday.
Sure. Today is Tuesday for your dining and or dancing pleasure. Tomorrow the high is supposed to be like 8 or something horrible like that. I'm looking at my weather app.
That's pretty warm. Weather right
Me? I notice the older I get, I used to make fun of my dad. He'd always talk about the weather. The older I get, it's like, so.
now. You have to keep track of the weather to know when to not go up, to not get rid of it.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, it's actually going to be a little bit warm. It's only supposed to get down to 3 degrees. Banana Belt, the howler monkeys will be out in force. Then I will take my mask off because of my great air circulation in here. Well, guy from the Proud Boys is on trial
Oh,
Huh?
what do you do?
for the conspiracy to in the January 6th attack. The conspiracy to. They're going sedition. See you tomorrow. So I get all my news from the New York Post. But the ancient Japanese killing stone said to Kanehi leave him, it's cracked open.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah,
I'm
so
excited. I'm pumped.
you know that's the way it goes.
What do you know?
You should get your news from the Washington Post. Is that the one that's owned by the movies?
Washington Times.
Washington Times.
The Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos.
Oh, even better.
What a celebrity.
No.
Kuan Yin method. Ouch. I have the test basically done for tomorrow. So there'll be a few things on you, Graham.
Sorry.
Partridge, did this ever at one time fit over a person's chin? Because I don't understand how
Yeah, it did, because you can adjust it on the
it's
side.
not, there's not that much room, there's not a whole lot of leather left to adjust.
My guess is it got ripped off. It's over 100 years old.
Right,
And the leather is kind of starting to petrify, so it's shrinking, shriveling up.
that's true too,
So
yeah.
it's shorter.
Because I mean,
But my guess, some of it ripped off.
I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't really look like a whole lot of it has actually left. But,
Yeah, so it must at the end of it must have came off, got brittle and just snapped off.
Yeah.
And all the leather's holding it on there. But you'll see a lot, put it on. They would put it right under their nose.
put it right, oh, okay, well, that's where it is.
Really common. And yeah, I know it's uncomfortable, I don't know why they did it that way. but
Okay,
that's-
so it actually wasn't a chin strap.
Well, you would see the chin strap, you would see it all the time.
Okay, well then this makes sense, because it doesn't look like there's any even a tear. So this actually makes a lot of sense.
So maybe that's why, but it's
Weird.
that'd be so uncomfortable.
Yeah. Especially you're running and sweating and just having a blast.
Having a blast.
Just having a blast.
Yesterday.
Just like goes good.
You hurt yourself too hard or you hurt yourself too hard? Yeah. That's all.
But you really want to be like, you don't want to be.
Kale.
Yes,
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the test.
Say what?
You guys practice saying Devontae Adams.
I know.
That's so bad. You might just hold out. Like, I don't know why we fight.
Don't put your mouth on this. Not you. That's weird.
Seattle's looking dangerous with Russell with Drew
It
Lock.
almost certainly never wins their war. Now, the German one,
Drew Lock could be dangerous next year.
Someone probably died in the German one.
it was abandoned on a battlefield, which happens a lot. You know, the helmets are heavy, so. But yeah, it was found on a battlefield in April 1945.
Wow.
Even though it's a World War I helmet.
So it
It's,
survives like partway into World War II.
yeah, they made so many helmets in World War I, and a lot were just kind of put in the warehouses.
Yeah.
So they were shorter helmets in World War II. And so even though the World War II helmets are slightly different, they just started having it.
That makes sense.
And then somebody picked it up, and it was a guy who used to work here, his grandpa.
Oh,
And he
wow.
just had it in his stuff, and he asked me if I wanted it, and I said, sure, I'll take it. I wish I had a Russian helmet from World War II. That's one thing I do wish I had. A student of mine bought one on eBay. There's a lot of Russian helmets. It's not that big of a deal. So let me get this real quick.
Is it worth it to even make it all the way to the other human white? Why even waste money on this?
I mean, not nice.
I bought that Garfield off of there. Sometimes there are some good stuff on
Never
eBay.
used it.
3. Now there's 2 left. Wow, that Garfield's perfect.
Yeah, I love it.
Makes the room. Garfield, Scooby's okay. But
Scooby's
it's not
fine, but Garfield, he's a part of American history. That thing's older than, that thing's like 40 years old, so.
All right. So let's go talk about the test. I'll do one more thing about Ukraine, and then we will start Manson. So we are under 15 cases. In my room, I'm not wearing a mask. We'll see. I have very good air circulation in this room. Yeah, this is literally petrified.
Yeah.
They're pretty cool, but yeah, the U.S. wore the British style until 42. Then they went to the tin, the steel pot. Yeah.
Which helmets have little spikes on them?
Yeah, it's German. The Allies call them, they're like pumpernickel, but they call them pumpernickels. The British and the Americans. But they weren't really helmets. It was more just like a leather helmet with just a little piece of steel here. It was just.
Was it just like decoration?
Yeah. And they quickly learned how miserable that was.
What a waste.
Yeah, like.
Don't have your knife.
Here's the American World War II.
Yeah.
What if for the next war, we, instead of helmets, we wear like steel top hats?
Well, the Belgian army in World War I wore top hats.
Really?
Yes. Up until the realization that this is crazy. And then they went to caps and then eventually to British helmet.
Was like the feather in a cap thing, like, did any people use those in wars?
Oh, sure.
The white feathers.
But a lot of, yeah, you'd see a lot of pictures of that.
White feather. Use like
I'll show you this real quick. That's a poor tank crew. That's a T-80 tank based on, of course, I know what you're all thinking. Yes, it's based on the T-62, which had a 4-man crew, but now it's a 3-man crew. I grew up in the Cold War. I know all the Soviet tanks. But all the shells for the automatic loader around this edge. And what happens is, and you see a lot of these tanks where the turret gets blown off, which is the poor crew. I mean, we'll just leave it at that. But if an anti-tank guided missile hits it at the right spot, one of those, just all it takes is one of those shells inside the turret to ignite, and it just pops it.
Oh, pops it
It
off.
pops. So there's the tank.
Yeah.
There's the turret.
And then is that Russian?
No, it's Russian. The Ukrainians lost a lot, but the Russians have lost a lot of equipment. That's another one right next to it. 4 tanks, T-80s, 120 millimeter gun. Anybody know what those are?
Same vessels.
Huh? Right there.
Oh, little
Oh,
artillery.
those are so when it gets shot, it propels those out.
Close. They're smoke launchers. And so if they think planes or something might be getting inside, or smoke, it can be heated so the thermal imagery can't find it, and so it disguises where the tank is. Or if they use infrared guided, it will heat, it'll hopefully infrared missile will go to the, yeah, whatever. But planes do that. You ever see a plane or helicopter and they'll drop flares? That's what they're doing, infrared guided. Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, which we've given, U.S. has just given 400 of them to Ukraine. They're infrared, they're partially infrared guided. So if they can get the exhaust, they fire them and it'll just follow the exhaust into the back of the plane. Wow. Of course, you got to be pretty gutsy to stand there like this until you get it. You got to have nerves of steel. I don't know if I have that. I like to think I would, but then again, when it actually hits, everyone says, yeah, I can do it. Then when you really have to do it, I don't know. But, by the way, the T-62 was a Russian tank made in the 1960s. Most of the Ukrainian tanks are versions of that, T-64s, and they're like from the late 1960s. Most of this equipment is old. And there's trains of Russian, little flashes, because Russia's so censored, of trains of equipment going to the front, and they're all old, even, we're talking 60s stuff for the Russians instead of 70s and 80s. So they are going into their reserves, National Guard. I have no idea what their plan is. Macron talked, you know who Macron is?
Yeah, French.
No, French president.
Oh, president.
I know, we got all kinds of different names for whatever. He talked to Putin, and was basically, Putin is, no, we're gonna win, we're taking it on. I'm not a fan of Macron, but I can understand why I guess he was just like this. But Russia is now announcing they're gonna maybe have a ceasefire for 24 hours so they give humanitarian aid. Of course, a 24-hour ceasefire, you know what that means? That's 24 hours to get
supplies.
yeah, to get stuff for
to
themselves. That's
restock,
what they do. So Ukraine would be smart to, I don't know, because you got civilians. So I told my Western Civ class this. So my sister-in-law lives in Berlin, and she went with a good friend of hers, because my sister-in-law and her husband and son, they live in an apartment, Berlin. It's expensive. Huh? Berliners, yes. And because it's Bayer. And so they don't have room for Ukrainian refugees, but they have a couple friends who do have houses. And so they went to the train station with him, and the Ukrainian refugees straight from the Polish border arrived at the train station, and her friend had a sign that said in English, because that's basically many of the Ukrainians can speak English, most of the Germans can speak English, and it said, "We have room for 3 refugees." And it's just very ad hoc. And so her friend took in 3 refugees, and all, Kim, my sister-in-law, they did a bunch of stuff to go help them. But it's a mother and her 2 daughters. And she wasn't sure when, and I imagine she knows now. On Sunday when my wife talked to her, but that's what just came in. And her husband is in a ad hoc militia in Kiev. Because they have 18 to 60 men, you can't leave the country.
Oh, if that's what they're doing. Wow.
You're not necessarily in the military, but you got to stay.
Uh-huh.
You got to stay. And so, yeah, who's 18 in here?
100 died.
Now, they're not for women, but a significant number, especially of young women, are staying to fight. That's what it is. They're fighting together. The universal draft, I always think is scary, but also, Montana's not being invaded by North Dakota today.
Yeah.
We could take North Dakota easy.
Oh, absolutely.
They got 100 ICBMs too and B-52 bombers. We don't have them.
We have Northeast.
We do have nuclear bombs.
But we have that
Which
too.
81 did wrong.
We have some. We have.
They also.
But they do too. They have 100 too.
We have
And
We
B-52s.
have Space Force, so we can't really trust
But we do have, we have Great Falls.
We have mountains on like South Dakota.
All right, so let's go talk about the test coming up.
We make a little.
And
You put a big piece of paper.
North Dakotas and the Montanans had a war. Those were always the jokes when I was a kid. North Dakota jokes. North Dakotans threw dynamite at the Montanans. The Montanans lit it and threw it back. Okay, that was humor when I was 8.
That's funny.
It's pretty good.
That actually is a funny.
So let me get this out. I got most of it written. So I'll answer any questions. I'll just go through which presentations we've done. So normally when I do Manson, we will start watching the movie. Marilyn Manson. Is he still playing?
Unfortunately, he just moved to the UK for avoid LA taxes. Very different.
He's also in a bunch of trouble because a bunch of exes of his are like claiming domestic abuse, which is almost definitely true.
I was gonna say, of course.
Yeah.
But I remember when he was really big a while ago. But Britain, remember I told you that London is like one of the most corrupt places for tax law and everything?
Yeah.
That's why I went there. So let me print this really quick, and so I have the ones, and we'll talk about, we'll just go through a presentation we've done very quickly. This is
Harlan, what was the name of your poll? Raj.
So I'm just going to go in order what we have, and if I'll answer a few questions. Of course, I'm not going to ask every single thing. Yes. Manson will be out after. I want to do the test now because I thought I was going to do cults and Manson together. But once we did Ukraine, I thought, oh, it's going to start getting too unwieldy of a test. And so let's just do that. We'll do either a mini test on Manson or combine Manson with a Manson. We'll do probably a mini little quiz on Manson. A Manson quiz where all you have to know is songs, some of his songs. And you have to do, and then the Beach Boys version. Yes, the Beach Boys did a Manson song. Yes.
Just have Ukraine, Manson,
That does kind of make me. The weird combinations of things. Of course, the Ukrainian Manson quiz. Okay, So the first one we did, the very first cult was Family International. And that's with David Berg, the Children of the God, flirty fishing. The next one's Medieval Cult of Saints, about relics, the influence of the Byzantine Empire. Saints. Maybe Thomas Aquinas. Next. Okay, I mispronounced this, and Tyler's gone, so I'm just going to mispronounce it. Sharinko. Sharinkio. We should do it. All of us do it on that little, how to pronounce it. So we'll baffle
I
everybody.
was impressed they got all the Japanese names.
He did quite well. Has a good ear. I'm not good at that. I don't have a good ear. I took 2 years of German. Nah. All right. So something about yoga. Moving on. No. Saren. Maybe so. I can't remember if I asked about the death penalty, but the thought was Armageddon was coming. They wanted to hurry it up. I do like the group. One of his group, the Mountain Wizards, just because I like saying the term Mountain Wizards. And then we have the Moonies, and so the church, the Unification Church. So something about some. I would probably ask Unification Church and Some Young Moon, maybe the mass weddings. The Unification Church, yeah, okay. Maybe after that, what do we have next? Oh, Happy Science. Happy Science, because it sounds so happy. Because it has the word happy in it. And is it Royuko? Roko?
Something like that, yeah. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, Okawa. That's actually really interesting. So you want to hear my connection to that?
Yes.
The Ryuko was a Japanese light carrier in World War II, and Okawa was a Japanese admiral in World War II. That's how I remember it. It's amazing the little things that will come into your head and then never leave. And then things you really want to know down the road, they're not there. Like where your keys are, things like that, gone. But obscure admirals from World War II, they're there and they're never leaving. Yes. What's that? I know it. I know yours too. That's another one. I know mine. Can I have it? Don't tell anybody, see? And so that was the leader, and very much exploitation, the realization party. Pretty right wing, want a strong military. Okay, then we got the Order of the Solar Temple, and that's Mambro and is it Joret? Joret, yeah. Very French. Even though they're Swiss, aren't they? Was he Swiss or is he French?
No, they were both French.
Where'd I get in my head Swiss?
Jordan.
That's what it was, yeah. Even though they speak French in Switzerland. It's like 4 national languages there.
And they speak Swiss German.
Hmm?
Swiss German.
And Swiss Italian.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Swiss Italian.
And Swiss.
And Swiss, yeah.
They
They
speak
one
Swiss
exchange
too.
student came and she.
They speak Miss.
Oh, really?
Like I was on
That's crazy.
And I know like people from Germany or Austria can't understand Swiss German. It's really, I mean, they can understand, but it's really hard.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I think it's a little bit like Ukrainian and Russia. You know, they're similar, but yeah. Okay, so we have, and then maybe talk about the Golden Way, the Knights Templar, how they committed suicide, you know, getting prepared for that. Not committed suicide, that was, yeah, yeah, weird. And then we have a key for a test. And then we have, moving on. From now on, I'm going to use this key for every test. So I wish you luck. Okay. I still really should make one of your tests just 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D.
That would freak me out too much.
If it was, I would question it in this class.
And then the best part would be you go A, B, C, D, E, and then that like, yeah, J, and then back in line. Then you'd be like,
You know, the very last question, so this picture, the very last question still meant to be for us.
Yeah. And, okay, then we have the FLDS. And so the fundamentalist LDS, Warren Jeffs, polygamy, so about maybe the Lost Boys, the ones that are kicked out, that's actually a good one. Child labor, that's a pretty good one. Just go with me on that. Church Universal and Triumphant, Summit Lighthouse, Elizabeth Clare Prophet. Where did they go? What city in Montana?
No, it was.
You remember? Where? Beautiful Gardner. So go into Yellowstone. By the way, the Paradise Valley, that's a beautiful valley. So just start in Livingston, drive down, look at the beautiful valley, stop at Chico Hot Springs and not get a room because it's full. They keep going.
That's where I think that's where is that where they're filming Yellowstone? You know?
Who?
Paramount. The movie or the show Yellowstone.
Oh yeah, what
I
about it?
think that's where they're filming.
Oh, do they film it there? Yeah. I've never seen the show. I know a lot of people really like it.
It's not Montana, but it is entertaining. It's a good show.
There's nothing wrong with
Just making entertainment. That's what they're doing.
people. Yeah, I've heard people say it's just mindless entertainment, and there's nothing wrong with that. I did see they filmed a scene at the Capitol, and I drove by. Totally did not know it was there, and I saw the most horrific actor in the world outside of it. One of the most evil actors in America, Kevin Costner. I saw Kevin Costner.
Kevin Costner?
He's horrible. We hate him. Have you seen him? You're either with us or against us. Aleister Crowley. So we have the Beast, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Where's is it Thelema or Thealema? Yeah. Thelema. Is that right? Where was he at? I mean, be kicked out of what country?
Britain.
Kind of
He was
Britain.
kicked out of Italy.
Italy too.
Was that in Britain for a while? Okay. Gotcha.
Okay, do we have cargo cults? Oh, all the people are gone. Should we just make him take the test tomorrow?
Oh, yeah.
Who's with me? Wow, you people, the people have spoken. Cargo cult, so John Frum, World War II, John Frum Day, the love of Prince Philip.
Yeah.
That's such a good story. They're so wild, cargo cults.
What was the cult called again? It was John from. Oh, it was just John.
John Frum, yeah. And it's John from.
John from Germany, John from Italy.
Well, actually, all Americans are John from Iowa. They're all from Iowa. The John Frum clan. And then we have the Qing Hao, the enlightened one. Is it Qing Hao? Qing Hai. I want to say Hao all the time. Hao. For everything. I just want to say Hao. Qing Hai. And the enlightened one kind of roots from Buddha, the Supreme Master. Is it Kuan Yin? Wang Yin. It's wrong. I knew that too. Wong.
Yeah. Like W-U-N-G.
Even though it's spelled Q-U. Yeah.
My cousin goes by Quan, and that's his name. So
Oh, really?
Quan, yeah.
And I know I've seen that before, but I can't help. I see Q and I want to put a K, and it just.
I can't read.
Yeah, like Quebec. It really is. It's hard.
Is that really not how you pronounce it?
Huh?
You don't pronounce it Quebec?
No, you do, but
Oh, Quebec.
I see QU and I want to say,
Oh.
and I can't help it. You know. But I know it's wrong, but I just can't. It's not cantaloupe. I don't know why I glared like that.
What's your favorite kind of melon?
Huh? Favorite kind?
Yeah, no.
Yellow watermelon. You ever had that? Oh, they're amazing. At the what is the farm north of Missoula?
Oh,
Dixon melons. Oh, unreal. Change your life. I'm such a different person. I would argue better. I would argue I'm a better person. No, if you ever get a chance to have a yellow watermelon,
okay.
they're really good. Yeah.
Did you hear about that John fight that took place? John fight?
John
Yeah,
fight?
like, yeah, like
2,000.
Oh, yeah, like
showed up.
if you look at the group chat of like everyone named John, like said meet here, just battling out for one John.
And like the over at like.
And it was like an 8-year-old that one.
Yeah, and that was like cool news.
How was it related to the
Scientology. Who wrote Dianetics? And what high school did he go to? Helena High.
That's how anytime you check in, you go, oh, Helena. No,
Yeah, I know.
not quite.
No.
And the funny thing is, we're named after a town in Arkansas because it's started by a bunch of Confederate draft dodgers.
Yeah.
But they pronounce it Helena there too. But then everyone outside of there, it's Helena, yeah. Then maybe the Thetans, Overlord Xenu, the Sea Org.
The Galactic Federation. The Sea Org is so crazy. I love that.
Volunteers, all work for the church. No, John Travolta will not be on there. We don't like John Travolta either. I blame John Travolta for late 1970s country music. Have you seen Urban Cowboy? Has anyone seen it? It's physically painful, isn't it? Yeah, it kind of hurts you to your soul. And if you continue to be mean to me, we will watch Urban Cowboy every day for the rest of the year. He also did Saturday Night Fever, which is horrible. And there's some good disco music, but not in Saturday Night Fever. To Australia. Via Bavaria, that's in Chile, worked for Pinochet, Colonia, and it's dignity, but it's dignidad.
Oh, the little thing.
Yeah. And then the Raelian Church, so Alec's not here, that's a UFO call. Claude Vorin, the Rail, he's a race car driver. The aliens are the Elohim, going to create a scientific utopia. And what are they offering you can get?
Feminine aliens.
Well, not only permanent alien, what's that?
Feminine aliens.
Well, yeah, they got feminine, everyone's,
No, you can't get them. They only go to Ray because he's the most feminine man on earth.
obviously. And you can be cloned.
Yeah.
Clone A.
Clone A.
We should all invest in Clone A.
Yes.
And then Heaven's Gate. Heaven's Gate, Marshall Applewhite. The Comet was Hale Bopp. The Extraterrestrials. Yeah, I can still vividly remember when that story came out. All dressed in the sweatpants, sweatsuits.
Oh, yeah,
Very black Nike tennis shoes, all exactly the same. The 12 tribes. What was their deli?
Yellow
The
Delhi.
wonderful Yellow
I
Deli.
got a TikTok about Yellow Delhi the same day, like right after we talked about it.
What's that? Who did?
Someone's listening.
Huh?
We talked about Yellow Delhi, then I got a TikTok about it's like, oh, this deli is ran by a cult, and it was the Yellow
Dude.
Deli.
That's so scary. I was eating Dots pretzels and I finished the bag and I was like opening a new tab on my computer and like under like the shopping recommendations it was a bag of Dots. Like they know, it's scary stuff. You guys ever had Dots pretzels?
They're too North Dakota-ish.
What are you trying to
Hey,
say?
are we going to war with North Dakota or not?
If that means losing Dots, no.
Yes.
Are you working for that?
What
What are you talking about?
By the way,
Freedom prize.
not only do I like Dots
Freedom
pretzels,
prize. Salisbury steak.
Dots, they also